Hey, thanks for checking out this tip with puremind.com. Going to call this tip the groove thief. So something I like to do quite often is go and find some track that I want to kind of steal the groove from, not necessarily the beat, but the groove itself. And I'll usually do this with just an 8-bar chunk of whatever I'm playing with. So the beauty of this is if you have Spotify or iTunes or whatever, even with Spotify, I'll actually just plug my phone into a Y cable that goes into my I/O, and I can actually just record in real time anything off of Spotify or anything in the world. The reason I'm not doing that right now is just because of copyright things and all of that. So I'm going to use one of my own tracks just to get around that. But you can apply this to anything. So I like this a lot. So I have one of my own tracks in here, and I'm going to first just find an 8-bar section, which is what I would do with anything. So I'm going to start right where the beat starts right there. So just make sure you have this button, tab to transient, on, and tab right to that start. Now I'm going to hit A, which is cut, start to insertion. Then I'm going to hit Y, which is actually snap to incoming timecode, but because there is none, it'll just snap to the start. So now I have one right at my start, and now I just want to find where is bar 9. Or even right there, even after 4. So I'm just using tab to transient to find that. And if you saw, I actually used tab to the left, which is the L key. But that's it right there. So I'm going to hit S. And then if I want to check the loop just for fun with this selected, I'm going to hit Control Command P, Dynamic Transport, and click over here toward the end. Cool, I know I have a good loop. I'm going to also bring in a click track just to be able to check what I'm doing. I'm going to drag that up to the top. So right now, we're totally off. So I'm going to hit 7 to just shut the click up for a second, 7 on the numeric keypad. So since I know this is a good loop, I'm going to hit, with it selected, I'm going to hit Command I, and the end should be, let's guess, 5. We think it's 4 bars, end should be 5-1. Say OK. Let's hit 7 to turn our click back on. So pretty good, right? If we want to get a higher click resolution, we could hit Option 1. And right here, go to click, change it to an 8th note to, let's do to session end, and apply. If you want to restore your lost selection, it's Option Command Z. So now we know we're close, but we're not quite right because this isn't robotic. So here's where the real trick of it comes in. You could go in here and you could do beat detective and that sort of thing. That might work, it might not. It depends really on, how really compressed the file is, oftentimes how well that's going to work. But beat detective I've used a ton, but I wanted to show you a way to do this really without beat detective. So what we want to do is create a dynamic grid so that we can just with our eyes drag around bar and beat markers. So you can see here the transient's a little bit off, again, because this actually has feel. So right now our grid is just showing us an exact 82.0389 tempo, which is just the average over our whole 4 bars. But what we want to do is just adjust our grid so that it lines up with the transients that we're going to need. So to change your grid size, you can go Control, Option, plus and minus, which I'm doing right now. Or you can just go up here and change it up here with that. So I want to set my grid to whatever is closest to lining up here. So wherever I'm close, stay in grid mode. You don't actually, for what we're trying to do, you don't want to get right on it. So wherever you see a transient that you're going to want to line up, and I even see one right there, just hit Command I right on the grid line. Just say OK. You can see it made a little tempo event there. Do it here. everywhere where you see the division, just go Command-I. And right now, actually, if I want to be slick with it, I can just select there, Shift-click up here, Command-click on this to get rid of it. Now I could actually just go Command-D, and I'm just duplicating just those bar and beat markers. So here's where it starts to be cool. What we've done is we've created a dynamic grid, and just with our eyes, rather than thinking about there are 960 ticks per quarter note and what are the subdivisions and all that jazz, you can go in here and just look at that. Just with your eyes, just drag the bar and beat marker to line up with those transients. If you're not sure, take a listen. Let's turn off our click for a minute. And sometimes it'll take a little bit of trial and error to get it exactly right. But hopefully you see the cool thing about this is just being able to manually adjust our grid. And the more feel something has, or the more it deviates from just being robotic, the more you'll have to pull these around a little bit. But that's the whole point. And the cool thing about doing this is that because you're creating a dynamic grid, a grid that changes over time, if you sync anything to it after the fact, like if you write MIDI and you just quantize the MIDI, it's going to quantize to this weirdo grid that we're creating. So everything is going to have this super duper tight feel, but it isn't just your straight robotic grid. So find stuff that you just love the feel of and do this. You know, think Stevie Wonder, James Brown, I don't know, anything you dig that has a feel that isn't just straight grid based, and you can steal their feel. And you can always check it with your click track. But first, I'm just trying to grab all the little basic moves I see. All right, so now let's listen. Let's zoom out with R. And as long R works as long as this little button right here is on. Let's turn on our click with 7 on the numeric keypad. And then if you hear one that you think is late, you can just move it. That was a little better. All right, that's the start of it. We're going to call that part 1, and let's end part 1 right there. Be back with you soon for part 2. Thanks a lot.
When I first came to PureMind, I had searched the forums and I had searched online, I had read magazines, I had talked with people, but it wasn't enough. What I needed to do was I needed to watch someone mix, start from scratch, and make their way up to a professional project.
I take them through all the steps and break it down, piece by piece. I want them to understand how sound interacts in the environment, number 1. Number 2, I want them to understand how instruments behave in a room, how to capture those instruments. Here's a microphone. What does a microphone go to? Here it is in a real-world environment. Now let's go back to the classroom and dissect that.
after a certain amount of time within the core program, you have access to the studios, right? And you have access to the microphones, and you have access to just bring in whoever you want and record. The first two Tumbleweed Wanderers EPs, they were both completely tracked here.
I brought my band in. We set up drums, did overdubs. I had other PureMind students on board as engineers, and we had a really, really good time tracking those songs.
There's a lot of hands-on experience. You get to see bands get recorded. You get to be involved with setting up the mics, the miking techniques, the compressors, how everything in a studio flows. It's good to have that knowledge and the hands-on experience with the professionals that have done that kind of work.
There's no shortage to what you can do. It's a supportive environment that says, here is a space where you can be creative and mess up, and not only will we not judge you for messing up, we'll applaud you in those efforts.